I really wish I could talk about this more at length, you know, like break it down sentence by sentence, but I really do not want to test Saturday Night Live's DMCA sensitivity on YouTube. I'm not even comfortable playing the audio. I'm going to risk it, though, for 5 seconds, okay? And this is the opening of Dave Chappelle's monologue on SNL the other night, okay? We're gonna that's our little gift, all right? Just, this is the first thing he says.
I stand with my friends in the Jewish community. And that, Kanye, is how you buy yourself some time.
Right there. I stand with those in the Jewish community, and that, Kanye, and if he says that I can, is how you buy yourself some time, which is true and also a little bit telling. So, if you've heard anything about Dave Chappelle's monologue on SNL, and you know how a Dave Chappelle bit goes, right? Like, basically, he just talks at you for 20 minutes. You know, like, he'll have one hand in his pocket, and he'll kind of have his shoulders together, and he'll tell it like it is and such. I want to front this, you know? Dave Chappelle is a unambiguously funny guy. I hope even people who understand that a lot of the stuff he's said lately is really bad, I hope we can all agree on that so we can just, like, leave it there and move on. You know what I mean? You have to be a really smart guy to be that funny. That doesn't come, like, accidentally. He knows what he's doing. And unfortunately, with that recognized, intelligence is really, really, it's compartmentalized, you know? You can be really brilliant in some respects and really dumb in others. Most smart people are like that. You know, there are ways in which even the brightest and most talented people will disappoint those around them with seemingly obvious stuff. And this is just a universal human thing. Dave is really dumb when it comes to politics. I don't want to attribute how he feels to malice, but God, he is just really stupid when it comes to these subjects. I think for the longest time, a lot of people, and I'll get to the specifics of what he said in a bit, even though I can't play through the whole thing. I think a lot of people have ascribed to Dave Chappelle a kind of latent sociological awareness, you know, like a bit of an edge, because a lot of his comedy has kind of relied on, usually with race and gender being the subject of discussion, has relied on like a tell it like it is attitude towards the types of intersectional situations that most people wouldn't want to draw attention to, you know, even for comedy. Dave Chappelle's known for making a lot of misogynistic jokes, and he does, and he's known for making a lot of jokes about race, which, depending on your political affiliation, can come across as really racist or really anti-racist, depending on how much you're willing to read into them and how much irony you think there is. For me personally, I think his issues on race were very well settled in terms of their, like, disposition with the George Floyd rant. You guys remember that? After George Floyd was murdered, he did his bit there, you know, one of those Netflix specials. He talked about it. And it was great. It was really, really good. I mean, it was phenomenal. When he talked about George Floyd, I think it's very clear, you know, from what direction he comes at some of these issues. And I had a lot of respect, you know? It was kind of a speech. He does that. That's his comedy. He does a speech, you know? He does a speech. He's got his head on straight when it comes to, you know, some elements of race issues. What bothers me, though, and I'm sure this is when it happened for a lot of you as well, a lot of his comments on trans people were really ill-informed. See, Dave Chappelle has gone beyond just having some transphobic opinions, which nobody's perfect, really. I'm willing to give leeway, even if my man, you know, says some stuff I disagree with. It really comes down to the way in which you express that disagreement, because he did this immediate, like, Ricky Gervais, or however you pronounce that guy's name, like, I'm a comedian under attack, you know, like, oh, cancel culture makes it so difficult for me to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I'm so brave, and my bravery is leading me to the idea that I support TERFs, you know, this, like, hate movement for which I have apparently very little understanding. Like, that's what my bravery has led me to. Let me bring up this, like, dead trans friend that I had as a way of, like, supporting my argument that I'm the victim here, as I support this hate group to attack trans people who are canceling me, Dave Chappelle, a guy who is definitely not enormously powerful and influential, and essentially uncancelable too. What could possibly cancel Dave Chappelle? Like, be real here, right? Come on. He pulled that, and I always thought when he did his trans like speech, that was really below him. Don't you guys think so? It's not just that I disagree, and I do. It's that it was less funny, less informed, and more whiny than he normally goes. See, his comedy with race was always really good because A, there was kind of like an underlying self-deprecatory tone that made it come across as relatable and not preachy. He was punching up. Yeah, he was punching up most of the time. And he understood the subjects. God, does Dave Chappelle understand racial comedy? Of course he does. It's Dave Chappelle. He understood it well enough to talk about it. He doesn't understand trans people or trans issues. Not to say he couldn't. He could if he wanted to. He could learn up. But he didn't. And for that reason, in addition to the politics being disappointing, in my opinion, the quality of the comedy was disappointing as well. And trust me, I am a guy who is willing to read past problematic material to find the joke, okay? We all like our cum towns here. I mean, God, that's what I'm known for in some parts of the left, in spite of me being relatively sensitive compared to a lot of people out there. Yeah, I'm not one of those people who will hear like, somebody say retard and then tune out. I mean, obviously, I can't be one of those people, or I wouldn't even show up to my own streams. But it just came across as less funny. So with all that being said, what's happened now? Well, if you remember the soundbite I opened with, Dave Chappelle's talking about Kanye. He's talking about anti-Semitism. It's not good. Quick refresher. Chappelle began the show by reading a statement which said, "I denounce anti-Semitism in all its forms and I stand by my friends in the Jewish community. And that, Kanye, shut up, get out of here, is how you buy yourself some time," Chappelle joked. He went on to then say Ye had broken the show business rules, which are the rules of perception. If they're black, then it's a gang. If they're Italian, it's a mob, Chappelle said. But if they're Jewish, it's a coincidence and you should never speak about it. Chappelle went on to talk about the abundance of Jewish people in Hollywood. You can watch the whole thing if you want to. I'm pretty sure SNL put the clip up on YouTube. I think it has 4 million views right now, so you wouldn't be the only person. Here's the issue. I want to be clear. Okay? I do not think that it is inherently morally wrong to make jokes about Jewish people, Jewishness, or anti-Semitism. There's a lot of comedy gold there, and that comedy gold is often touched on, in my experience, by Jews, because if you're Jewish in America, like, you know about the JQ, right? Like, if you're Jewish in America, you know that there's, like, conspiracists out there who think you secretly control. So, in my experience with Jewish people, and I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, they are constantly making jokes about this, Like, oh, why was I able to get in just before the light turned red? Ah, you see, I deposited a shekel in the little divider between the two front seats, and the Jewish high command realized that I was trying to, why does your mom let you have 2 hot dogs? It's all that shit. I swear to God, I remember there was a lot of Persian Jews I grew up with. There was like this song that got iterated upon throughout high school. Like, it started one thing, it ended up another, and the song was about, if you toss a penny down the hallway, how many Jewish people will run after it? This was being told exclusively by Jewish people. To my knowledge, not a single non-Jewish person was participating in this, like, high school, guffawing, like, wacky, haha, it was all jokes, and I found it very funny. And by the way, I grew up in a community which was so pro-Jewish that I didn't even, like, get See, that's the thing. I didn't get the talk the way they did. They would have learned from their parents. Hey, just so you know, Jewish people are the subject of a lot of really weird conspiracies in America. They would have gotten that context. I didn't. My parents didn't tell me after school every day, hey, remember all those funny jokes and all your Jewish friends? Well, those jokes are informed by the fact that, and then they explain, like, contemporary anti-Semitism. So I just heard a bunch of Jews making anti-Semitic jokes and thought, like, wow, Jews must be in a great spot, like, geopolitically, for them to be able to make all these jokes. Like, this is You know, I've noticed black people get tetchy about racism. These Jewish people do not get tetchy about anti-Semitism. They must be, you know, and then I grew up a little bit, right? I just want to make it clear. I am not one of those people who thinks like, oh, you know, this is taboo. You can't touch on this subject. And the reason, I know a lot of you know this, the reason I'm being clear about this is because like a lot of people who might come across this video who aren't from my community, I feel like I have to defend myself against that. This is what you have to do anytime you criticize a comedian, by the way. You have to make like 25 minutes of preemptive, like, hey, I believe in comedy. Hey, I'm not counseling anyone. Hey, I think this. Hey, I think that. Hey, it's totally fine if we don't agree on it. Like, you have to be the most defensive guy on earth. Yeah, the whole preamble. If ever you're criticizing a comedian for anything, which is really annoying, but I'm willing to do it, you know, whatever. Look, here's the issue, okay? If you watch the entire Dave Chappelle speech, and I did, there are a lot of funny bits in there. A lot of funny jokes. It's like an 11-minute bit, and what we're seeing here are enough quotes to fill up maybe 30 seconds of it getting clipped out. You think this is going to be fully representative of everything Dave Chappelle said? I don't think so. You can watch the whole thing. In fact, I encourage you to immediately after watching what I've said. 15 minutes? 15, not 11. However, there were some things here that I think are pretty abjectly terrible. Okay? Unfortunately, this is a trend with Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, I don't think he's that progressive of a guy. I do think he's very defensive of black people. And for that reason, like, I think his position running into this is like, the interesting thing is that Dave Chappelle, who is like the don't you get offended by my comedy guy, right? Like, he's the guy, like, you know, yeah, I'm telling it like it is, you know, yeah, I'm so edgy and irreverent. But he's kind of libcucky, SJW snowflakey when it comes to black people, isn't he? Not in the sense that he's anti-racist, but in the sense that he will obfuscate criticism and race bait to attack other groups. Remember what he did with trans people? Remember? He framed trans oppression as an us or them thing with black people. Do you remember that? It was like, yeah, it was like, oh, well, I see all these, like, white trans people who think they have it worse than us. I have not seen this in my life. What, this battle between white trans people and black people? This exists in Dave Chappelle's head. This is not really happening. Like 5 people, okay, like in groups of millions, this is not a thing that's happening. He didn't seem to believe that black trans people could exist. He framed transness as like a white thing, you know? Which I see a lot of anti-racist black people do sometimes, you know, like this is like a frivolous white cultural thing, which is pretty bad. And there are queer black people, but you know, whatever. And he does it here too. Chappelle said he could see how West would adopt the delusion that Jews run show business, saying it's not a crazy thing to think, but it's a crazy thing to say out loud in a climate like this. He went on, I know the Jewish people have been through terrible things all over the world, but you can't blame that on black Americans. You just can't. What is this? What is this? What is this? What is this race baiting snowflake bullshit? Nobody's doing this. Nobody's saying this. Ah, yeah, Kanye said a thing. Why are black people attacking Jewish people? No, they're not saying that. But he's so defensive, isn't he? He's very defensive. And every time he's got a politically problematic take to throw out there, you know he's got black people up as a shield. He's done this multiple times now. He did this in both of his big trans specials, and he's doing it here again. Every time. It's not him who has a beef with queer people or with this whole, like, framing of Kanye as an anti-Semite, you know? It's actually, he's defending black people from all of these members of Minority Group X who are overreacting to, oh, you know, maybe you have some problems. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand, right? I'm trying to hit this very pointedly because I don't think that Dave Chappelle is like Blitler. I don't think he's like Kanye or Irving, where he's like ideologically in his head, he's like denying the Holocaust the way like Kanye and Irving have or whatever. I don't think so. I think my man just gets real fucking defensive with black people. I think he perceives all social progressivism as a zero-sum game where all recognition of issues that aren't about the suffering of black people come at the expense of recognizing the suffering of black people. He has to defend that as like the one line, which is unironic oppression Olympics, unironic, like stereotypical SJW snowflake behavior, total lack of understanding of intersectional analysis, 100% zero intersectional analysis right here. I just think it's funny that a lot of conservatives are going to run defense when this guy's literally repping the stereotype of the ideology that the SJWs have supposedly been pushing for a decade, you know, according to some groups of men online, you know. No, I agree that Astatine, malice and ignorance are not like mutually exclusive things. They don't exist opposite each other. They are, as is often the case with powerful people like Dave Chappelle, you know? My man has a lot of power, a lot of influence, and you know what? He's got a lot of free time too. He's got a lot of free time to better educate himself on this stuff. And I'm not saying he's got to come out some kind of lefty. I mean, that'd be nice, but these are like very basic fuck ups that he's making. And I mean, these aren't just ethical fuck ups, these are logical fuck ups. And at the end of the day, right, like good comedy derives from intelligent social analysis. It does. Whether you're analyzing the perfect drop timing for a joke or the best way to comedically frame some peculiar situation, social awareness is the bedrock of all good comedy. And this is just a failing in that regard. And it affects his comedy and it affects his analysis. And I don't think that Dave would appreciate just being thought of as like a funny, goofy, haha man. My man, Dave, who did his George Floyd bit, very obviously has a political opinion that he wants to push forward. That's all of his bits these days. He talks at the camera for 15 minutes or 20 or 30 or whatever, explaining his opinions. I just saw this from YouTube chat. Vaush now knows more about comedy than the greatest living comedian, good grief. You are the snowflake, NM, in YouTube chat. You're the snowflake. You're defensive. Nobody ever got to be the greatest comedian by walling themselves off to criticism. If Dave had your brain, he would have bombed his first night at stand-up, called everyone who said that he did it badly like a retard, and never improved. Yeah, critical analysis is an acceptable component of both the comedic and political processes. But even if he had been funny and on point comedically, he still would have been wrong. It was wrong to say what he said. It was wrong to do this, like, Jewish people need to back off black people bullshit. That isn't happening.